thank you so much for doing this with us. I hope you're staying safe during this quarantine that we're in.
Yeah, we're doing pretty well. I mean, running esports, you know how it's online, so we're affected a little less than everyone else. I know you probably already know this, but since esports is an official department, we kind of run a little differently from other schools, and there's so many people working on all these different things. I specialize mainly in some of our special projects, so I manage a lot of the relationships with both on-campus and off-campus sponsors and partners. I do our summer camps. I'm running spring intramural matches right now for our students, so a lot of kind of event programming, as well as the arena. When we were open, we did have a facility that I managed as well. So that's kind of where my expertise is. But also I did work with the club as a student. I was the president for our own club, also at UCI for about like 4 years before I started working here full time. So I totally feel you on the challenges from a club perspective. It's very difficult. But I love that you're already involved with NASEF and therefore aware of those resources that can help you out. So for me, I'd played games pretty much my whole life. It's probably a very similar story with almost everyone involved in esports these days. Played as a kid, saw it as a hobby, really enjoyed kind of the skills I was learning through it. But obviously as a kid, I wasn't thinking about I'm improving my communication skills and organizing events. It was just something I did for fun. And it wasn't until like you're getting started early, like in high school, that's when League of Legends came out, and we really just got sucked into it as students. And we would like play casually with our friends and do, in houses and stuff. But it never grew to the point of being an official club. So it wasn't until I was actually in college. I was one of the first members of our League of Legends club the first year. Took the next 2 years basically volunteering randomly, doing like graphics design and stuff for the club. Decided that there weren't enough gaming clubs on campus for also all the other games that people play. You probably know this, right? You might have a main game, but you also dabble in like the latest battle royale that comes out, or whatever. Waiting for Valorant and stuff like that. So we saw the value in creating a separate kind of like an esports game agnostic club, and that is what really inspired us to build an esports program today. And at that point, I was already so involved with tournament running and doing graphics for League of Legends that when we expanded it into a larger club, I took on the role as president, stayed there from 2014 to 2016. And I was studying programming, and I don't hate programming. Like, it's actually still pretty fun, but I didn't get the same joy from doing like all the projects and actually coding that I did when I was dedicating free time to running these events and doing cool things with all of these students on this college campus, right? So basically, the whole club experience, being in a leadership role, working with a bunch of awesome companies like Riot Games, we were their first kind of guinea pig for a college esports program. So we really got to see it grow from the ground up. So my interest in staying involved in esports stemmed from that club experience. And then thankfully getting hired by the university to kind of build out an official varsity program. It's kind of a lot of other collegiate organizers say, yeah, that's my dream come true, is to get hired to do what I've been doing for free for so many years. So it really is that face-to-face contact at events, hearing the feedback, creating these awesome experiences that bring people together and actually teach you skills on the way. It's just something that I've been passionate about, both from the student perspective, then from the administrator perspective, and that's why I'm still here today. I would say the biggest challenge is the same for pretty much all clubs on a campus, which is you never know how to get the attendance numbers up and make sure people are actually coming out to your events. Especially with gaming clubs, and we see this nationally, internationally, is that because you can play from home, right? What is the incentive to actually get them out of their dorms, coming out onto the campus or meeting up in a lecture hall, right? Where the internet might not even be ideal. So I think the biggest challenge definitely from the club perspective is how do you build all these things on your own time while juggling a full-time student job and, being a student and like doing homework and all these things. How do you make sure you're still providing a good experience for people and people are still joining the club? That's kind of always been the number one challenge, I think, for people is recruiting and retention. But I also think that another big topic that clubs bring up that they have struggles with is funding, right? So if you don't have money to, like a big incentive for people to come out is having like a prize pool or like doing raffles. And you really can't do that when you're a bunch of like poor kids at home but don't really have the money to dedicate to this. So that's kind of what we've always seen as a big hurdle. So now that we have an official program, it's like, how can we give back and make it a little easier for the clubs. So I guess answering from the club perspective first is obviously you just relied on, did people attend the club fair and to even learn about you existing in the first place, seeing what on-campus resources there are. So for example, we have like a student government, right, that has funding that they can dedicate to different activities going on that support student life. So finding out about that committee and knowing we could apply to that for major events to get like $2,000 to do like pricing and food and drinks and all that stuff was very helpful for us. Other than that, really, it's just word of mouth, using social media, making Discord servers, like see if your school has a subreddit already. If not, like find Facebook groups and kind of just really grassroots kind of recruiting. And then from the other perspective, from the administrative standpoint, once we started our varsity program, it's how do we differentiate ourselves from schools that don't have varsity programs, but also for the schools that do, what do we do differently? So for us, recruitment really is a more, of course, like recruiting players, that's the most obvious thing, is like, how can we make sure people know we offer scholarships? How do we entice them to come to UCI for like maybe their major is a really strong program and that's why they come here and also play esports on the side. But there's a lot of stuff to think about when it comes to recruiting. And for us, our priority really has just been getting people on our campus and getting involved in any way they want to, not just playing games. So we hire 80 students every single year in different roles, like production to team management, graphic design, all these different things. And by building that support structure and offering all those different roles within our program that are paid, it's been a really great way to get more people into esports, especially at our university. So the varsity program itself, so actually giving scholarships out and competing in like official tournaments, we have 3 games. So we have League of Legends, Overwatch, and Super Smash Bros. Ultimate. We started off with just League, expanded to Overwatch for 2 years, and then Smash is something new that we did this year. Mainly because we got a big donor coming in and they basically said, we're going to give you a big chunk of money, make it happen to support Ultimate players, because Nintendo doesn't support kind of like the competitive scene as much as like Riot Games and Blizzards do. So we hadn't actually decided to do Ultimate initially because it was like, what are they going to play? Who are they going to compete against? There wasn't a lot of league structure there. So those are the 3 that we officially field teams for. But then also we have the arena, which is more of like the entertainment facility that we have on our campus. And we make sure that that can support all the game. So if a club comes around, like we don't have, let's just pick a random game. Like we don't have a CSGO team that's on the varsity level that we can offer scholarships to. Lots of reasons for that, of course, like subject matter, popularity on campus, whether or not there's an official tournament run by the developers, which currently there isn't. So, but we still want to support them. There's so many people that play CSGO. It's one of the most popular esports titles out there. So we make sure it's on all of our computers so people can play on it casually. But we also offer free time to practice and play matches in there and do tryouts for all of the clubs that we can't support with an official varsity program just yet. From the overall student population, it's League of Legends still is the game you see played casually in the arena the most often. We get the most turnout for those types of events. And it's also the teams that we're able to support the most with multiple tournaments, because we have both a varsity and a junior varsity roster, just because they have a separate tournament that we can join. But in terms of the 3 games that we support, I would say that right now, I think Overwatch is leading the way in terms of being like the passionate students that really want to compete, really want to make this better, really want to get better. I've been really impressed by our varsity Overwatch team so far. I know there's a couple games that have been pretty solid choices in general for both K-12 and college programs. There's like Rocket League, because we don't have a controller game that's super popular that can be played both on PC and console. So it's something that I've seen a lot of schools offer scholarships for. A couple others, it's usually just whenever a game gets really big, we're like, we want to be able to support it, but there are just so many, like I mentioned before, right? Like you're looking at subject matter as well. So first-person shooters, wildly popular. Overwatch, of course, more or less follows that guideline, but because it's so like cartoonized and it's very high fantasy, it's almost like more magic than it is just shooting guns. So that's the way we were able to approve it. But you just can't do it with everything. I think if there was a group or a community I could kind of skip all those blocks for and not cause any issues, I think CS goes up there, just because we have such a dedicated community and the students have been wanting support for so long. But I don't think realistically that's happening anytime soon. We get so many questions from other schools, like, how did you build the arena? How do you make sure you're not losing money on this? And like all these different questions. And I think right now I'm seeing so many schools that are thinking of trying to offer that kind of like 3-pronged strategy. In addition to the fact that we support like careers, we have a shoutcasting program, we do streaming. There's so many things that some schools just don't prioritize. So from what I'm seeing, there's interest in supporting esports program to that level. Right now, it's a matter of, can the schools find the resources to do it? And also, is it just feasible on their campus? Mm-hmm. I do think that esports scholarships overall, not including the physical location and like all the career support and stuff like that, just in terms of pure competitive leagues and teams and scholarships for it, there's already like, I don't know what it is, the number is now, it was like 250 last I checked. So we are seeing this awesome trajectory of people taking it a little more seriously. Maybe it's only a couple administrators per college that are 100% for it, but they're able to, get things past approval. So it's looking pretty good just in terms of esports being more well accepted, being more popular across campuses. But to reach the point where you have kind of like this full support from all the different people on the university, that is really, really difficult. So I'm hopeful, right, about seeing that in the next 5 years, but it's also a thing that we still hear people criticizing it from all these institutions that we're consulting. So I don't know how soon it will be. So when we were starting our esports department, we were pitching it. We weren't even a real thing yet. We were trying to figure out where on campus does this make sense, right? And a lot of schools went straight to athletics. It's something that we also talked to the athletics department about. But the enthusiasm for us was actually in student affairs. So they're the ones that handle clubs, admissions, housing, like anything to do with the student life that isn't academics, they pretty much handle, other than athletics, of course. So for us, we can't compare it directly, obviously, because we have different staff running esports versus sports. We have tradition in place for sports, like the Title IX regulations, NCAA regulations. They have so many years of traditions and things that they have to follow. So from what we've seen is esports is more likely to draw in people that don't have like that history of like maybe their whole family watches soccer or their whole family really like celebrates the Super Bowl. Like we don't see that societal setup for us. So all the students that are passionate that we're meeting are people that discovered it on their own. Usually they're the first people in their family that really know what games are. So it's like, I wouldn't say we're necessarily more or less popular, but we're reaching completely different audiences right now, which I actually think is really cool from a university standpoint. You want to engage as many students as possible. But in terms of like sports games, which is that weird kind of intersection of traditional sports and video games, before, the whole COVID-19 work from home, stay at home thing, sports games were not very popular at UCI just because the people that played them typically would prefer to play sports, I think. And the people that played video games really didn't see sports games as like their niche. So we're seeing that actually expand a lot. Our intramurals right now, FIFA is the most popular game we had to actually open up a second league for, because now you're seeing all these people that typically wouldn't use video games as their outlet. It's now their only opportunity to continue doing what they love and kind of engage with those franchises. So it's actually kind of, it's tipping the scales a little bit, seeing how everyone's at home now. I was mentioning FIFA as part of our intramural program. So basically we're offering free tournaments for people within UCI to compete with each other. It's more of a casual thing. But for that, it really is just reaching out again, like through our mailing lists, through the campus communications with people, trying to make people aware that we're offering programming over spring quarter, even though there aren't like classes on campus, we still want to support that. So we recruit for these leagues just through the same ways we recruit for any like club event. But in terms of recruiting for like a varsity team and trying to foster that evolving is not the right word. Development is the right word. For that, it's really different from traditional sports. We don't scout people. So we're not looking at like solo queue ladders and saying, this person looks great. Not sure what their plans are for college, but let's reach out and see if he'll play for us. That's definitely not how we handle it, because as a university, we have to look at grades first and foremost, right? So we're actually looking first for people that want to be UCI students, and then maybe they're also really good at games and want to play and earn a scholarship while they're here, but the degree and graduating is still number one. So the way we do that is we have a bunch of forms people can fill out to express their interest, and we can keep an eye on like their UC app while they apply, and also tie that to like the op.gg account, for example, and check their profile there. So we kind of look at it as once you get in, then we do tryouts, and then we bring in anyone that's actually interested in playing. Hopefully they make it to UCI, and by that point, we can just recruit through live tryouts and see who the best 5 or 6 players are. Probably not UCI, but I do know that some schools do it this way. There are some schools that recruit straight out of like tier 2 kind of scene. So they're looking at people that are playing professionally, that they're like, hey, if you want to come back to school, consider us. So that's something that we have not done yet, but I've seen other schools do it. Lots of pros and cons, obviously. For us, our priority is for students to get a good GPA, still graduate, have basically that backup plan, even if they do want to go pro for a couple years after graduating. That's kind of our experience. Is we don't want to encourage people to come here just for the esports scholarship as like a stepping stone to their pro career. And then what we've seen with that is when people with that priority show up, they usually drop out right after the collegiate tournament ends or something like that. So we want to be very careful about it. But in terms of that flagging aspect that you mentioned, like that's definitely a thing I think at every university's admissions department is there is some way to indicate that the student would be benefiting the campus outside of just purely academics and their own ability and their graduation plans and stuff like that. So while we can't be like, oh, this person does like really, really bad GPA, but we really want him to play, like we can't say, oh, here's this magical switch that we flip and they get in. So there's no such thing as that. Our scholarships aren't even full rides, so it's also very difficult to have that be the sole reason for someone to come to our school. So what we can do though is we can still appeal for them. We can help them with like writing appeals if they're on the border. We can kind of get a lot of guidance on the application process that might give them a leg up, but it is still based on purely their transcript and then their in-game skill. So we've definitely seen some examples of that already. So there's parents that come in for tours with their kid and will ask us so many questions about how we support esports. And this is like, it's not the majority of parents yet, I don't think, but it's really cool seeing that support where they're just kind of learning about all the opportunities for kids and what they can do before they even apply for college. So that's been encouraging, but I think right now, because games are so young, it's not as common to see parents that have grown up playing video games, especially not the video games today, right? Like League of Legends is like a maybe because it's been around for like almost 9 years now or something. So there's a slight possibility that a parent played it in like, say, college and now have kids and then they really understand esports and gaming and all of that. But you really don't see that because the franchises are so new. So I think it's going to take a lot longer time, maybe like another generation before pretty much all the parents are gamers themselves or were when they were kids and can understand that there's a balance to it. It's obviously, it can be unhealthy. It can be like all these different things like can cause bad habits. But I think once the parents are gamers, they also know how to kind of balance that out and like say, here are some healthy gaming habits. And therefore, it'll be more normal for them to consider it as like an extracurricular before going to college. We don't see a lot of that club sport structure. I think in your email that you reached out in, that's like one of the challenges is there's only so many leagues. There's not that much infrastructure. Your school may or may not have someone championing this cause. So until the structure is built all the way from youth through college and to the professional scene, like it is for sports, it's not going to be as fluid and as accepted by society, I don't think. What I can see in terms of ways that we're going to continue getting better is we still have to figure out the best way for this to be really worth it for our kids. So essentially, our players are juggling being a full-time student. They might have a job part-time as well, and they're also playing for our team. And our team, I don't know how many hours realistically they are dedicating to it, but it's at least like 10 to 15 hours a week minimum. So they're basically doing 3 things at once that really could use your entire attention. So something that we've been working on a lot in the past 2 years is how do we build infrastructure for them, support them, maybe have study halls, go over resume reviews with them, introduce them to cool opportunities, just to kind of prepare them for life and also being a successful student while they're playing. But ultimately, if you think about it, the scholarship money that we're offering is, I think it's on the higher side compared to a lot of the other big schools that are really strong. But also it's nowhere near the same as being able to offer like a full scholarship, like a lot of traditional sports programs, or some of the private schools that have more funding for esports. Like right now, UCI Esports is completely self-funded, so we don't take anything from the university or tuition or anything like that, but that limits how much we're able to offer. And you look at how much time players are actually playing the game and practicing, and then they have their matches on the weekends. Like, they're not actually getting that much, like, it's not enough money to warrant like 1 billion hours of work, plus you still have to be a good student. So I think we still need to figure that out. Like, how do we balance it so that the students aren't effectively working for less than minimum wage? Of course, like, people think a scholarship for video games, like, that's so fun, you're so lucky. But also it is a lot of hard work. There's a lot of like mandatory meetings they have to go to, and all these different things they're doing that are good for them, but also, you know, difficult. So I think this is something that all programs should be thinking about, that a lot of them aren't thinking about, is how do you make sure that you're not overworking and causing burnout in your students? So I see us as kind of leading that right now, and hopefully we can continue making it better, share our knowledge with other schools, and just kind of further the scene that way. But other than that, we're just going to continue doing what we do. And I think we just want to do that well. We want to win leagues. We want to contribute to research. We want to have all these student jobs on our campus, and also offer really like awesome programming for people off campus, like summer camps, working with NASAF, all these different things. So I hope to see that we just continue that trajectory and continue doing really well in those areas too.
I just want to say thank you for your time. It's really informative, and I hope that we can use this information. Hopefully that our Board of Education, and they are very open to this, in fact, so we are lucky as a school district to have that on our side going for us, and also admin at our school as well, trying to push for this as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's awesome what you're doing. It's definitely a challenge, but everyone's figuring it out, and I think we'll see collegiate programs in the pro scene also get more and more healthy as, you know, these youth leagues and youth programs at their own schools start to develop. So that's one of the main reasons we work with NASAF, right? It exists because we care about building up these structures and these pipelines to be able to sustain everything that comes afterwards. So yeah, props to you too for all the stuff that you're working on. Yeah, I'm glad I could help.